So I'm Erin Bennett. I'm the American Heart Association Government Relations Director, here with Courtney Frost. What is your title? It's long.
No, it's got cut short. It's the program officer over High Five at the Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation for Health. There's the long part.
That's the long part. But we've been working on safe routes to schools with the HA, with the Idaho Walk Bike Alliance and Cynthia here at the State House for the past 3 years, and it's been a challenge. And we have partnered with the Blue Cross Foundation to help kind of build that community level work so that we're having more of the conversations that involve you guys in your communities, the different organizations and groups that are working on livability. So AARP and Cancer Society and Lung Association that's working on air quality. And we want all of these things to be a factor in what we're talking about when we talk about these walking and biking issues, because they all matter and they're all going to hit a point where that particular legislator that's making a decision thinks that's something I can latch onto, and you can usually see that when you're talking to them. So that's kind of why we're here and what we're talking about today in terms of improving livability, because we want it to be bigger than just one issue. And I kind of say, don't put yourself in a box, because people will try to do that to you regardless. So make sure that you're not just saying, we want bikes, we want bikes, we want bikes, we want bikeable places, because bikeable places are good for people who walk and people who want to be engaged in community events, and they help improve air quality and they help improve health and they get kids thinking better. And we know, kids that are more active are more engaged and test better, which is something that people who are into education appreciate. So thinking about a bigger picture conversation. So that's kind of, I'm assuming everyone in here knows what Safe Routes to Schools is. Infrastructure, non-infrastructure that helps kids walk and bike to school. Keep your messages short when you're talking to legislators, so that's what I've broken it down to. But I'm going to hand it over to Courtney to talk a little bit about what we do in terms of the legislative walking challenge, the mayor's walking challenge, and how they work fantastically with us.
Was I supposed to be scrolling through the slides for you?
Not necessarily.
First of all, has anyone heard of Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation? 2. Cool. That's 2 more than usual. So, first of all, I wanted to share with you a little bit about the Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation. The foundation is the nonprofit arm of Blue Cross that focuses on the root issues to some of Idaho's largest health problems. So, the foundation was founded in 2001. We have given over $11 million to Idaho-based nonprofits, municipalities, and schools. During that time, we pride ourselves in being transformational, not transactional. It's kind of a tagline that we like to use because we're not a funder that cuts a check and walks away. You won't see us really doing a lot of sponsorships of walks or things like that, because we really do emphasize the transformational solutions. And how we do that is through this funding model up here. And the reason why I want to make sure to point that out is it really does emphasize why we work with the American Heart Association and other experts in this field to make change. So we use this catalytic thought process, pair that with some partnership building of those either who can make change or who are experts in the area, and then we have transformational solutions. So that's where we see ourselves. This is what I find is the North Star of our funding. We know that we certainly just can't do it alone, and we want to make our dollars, we don't have a lot of them, really count. So High Five is the initiative that I oversee. High Five is our children's health initiative under the Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation that focuses on getting access to healthy foods and physical activity. Because we all know that 1 in 3 children in Idaho are overweight and obese. So we know that obesity is one of those sticky, wicked issues that one person or one entity cannot fight alone. So this is a proverb that we have at the foundation. It's right above our executive director's cubicle. It says, when spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. Again, emphasizing that we all need to work together to unify our messages, just like Melissa just said a second ago, and tackle these complex problems. Anyone have any questions up until now? No? Again, trying to make this more of a conversation.
I hate talking
No?
at people. I'd rather like answer your questions.
Yes.
Or engage you in some way.
Yes. Okay. So I'm here to talk about our walking challenges. We have actually had a lot of great successes, and it's been a really great way for us to engage elected officials on the local level and the state level. So I am going to pull up a video of our mayor's walking challenge.
Why am
Maybe. Lies.
I'm a liar.
Lies. Anyway. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you, high five.
Thanks, high five.
Thanks, high five. Thanks, high five.
Oops. All right. So, Mayor's School Walking Challenge. It's pretty simple, and it's exactly what you think when you hear those words. We worked with St. Luke's and the Idaho Dairy Council last year to put on this walking challenge. We give elected officials or mayors Fitbits, encourage them to walk for throughout the month of October. The goal is to hit 10,000 steps per day. Once they do that, they are awarded funds that they can either donate to their parks department or elementary school to start a walking program or improve their physical activity equipment. Now, obviously, there's awesome successes just from the numbers standpoint of things, but why do we do this? And it really helps us open up this conversation about walkability with elected officials in a different way. We ended up having these elected officials who are participating end up being a real role model in their community and really strong advocates for walkability. We've had several mayors come out saying after this challenge and after having to walk all the streets, they understood what walking is like in their community, what the kids are going through when they're walking to school. Even when they walk with the school, the conversations that they have with the students have actually been a game changer for some of our mayors. Some unexpected successes that we have had is Twin Falls was revamping some of their sidewalk improvements because of this challenge, and that's the lovely mayor, Sean Berger. If you guys know him, you should know him because he's fantastic. We also had Mayor Gordon Petrie, who I think was presenting in the other room, actually become a fellow of America Walks because of this. And then we also had the mayor of Homedale do some pretty innovative things of getting healthy food in their city activities, as well as now looking at city planning a little bit different. I just had a meeting with him where he said that they're talking about getting a low-income housing in Homedale, and his first question was now, how are they going to get to the grocery store? And even just that question right there is has been pretty awesome, a great success for us. And then in February, we basically do the exact same thing, but with legislators for the state level. So we give legislators Fitbits. We encourage them to walk throughout the month of February. It gets tricky because sometimes there's snow and a lot of complaining, but that's okay. I serve as the complaint department sometimes in February. And we encourage them to hit that 10,000 step mileage or step count. Once they do, they receive funds for their parks department or their elementary school in their district. We've also had some pretty interesting successes from that. There were, Sage Dixon up in Sandpoint has actually donated the last 4 years of his winnings to put in a playground at Farm and Stidwell that will be accessible for handicapped students, which has been pretty cool. And obviously Matt, Representative Erpelding, has donated his funds to the most at-risk or high needs schools, even if they're not in his district, which I think is pretty cool. So this is another way of getting these legislators at least thinking a little bit more about walking themselves, and then it really creates this momentum for then safe routes.
So,
Yeah.
So my question, Courtney,
Yes, ma'am.
is for the folks here in this room, is your program a way to get legislators involved? Can they talk to their legislators about it?
Yeah.
Can they talk to you about
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Get your legislators, mayors involved with it. I think that it's a really good talking point to say, and everything is on our High Five website, so you can see if your legislator is participating, because then you can use that as a talking point. Now, we cannot lobby, but you can say, hey, I see that you're part of the Steps for Schools Challenge. That's awesome. Have you walked on sidewalk B in blah, blah, blah? That's a good segue to talk about your subjects through this challenge. Yes, ma'am.
So with the step challenge being in February, and the legislature being in session then, so do you get feedback on what they're seeing walking here, and then are they back home during the weekend, so you're getting good feedback on both?
Yes.
Infrastructure?
Yep, absolutely. And what we see is they're much more active, obviously, when they're back home, walking around versus here. Some of the feedback that we have received said, it's really hard. I'm in session all of the time. It's really hard in committee to get those 10,000 steps. And I say, adults who work 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 Monday through Friday are dealing with the same thing. We're all sitting down and we're trying to also be healthy. So it actually opens up the conversation that way too of, us adults need to stand up and walk those 10 minutes or things like that.
and just moving on, our schools are set up so that children are sitting from 8 a.m. till 3 p.m. and we expect them to sit there and learn. I don't know about you, but I don't have children. I have nieces that can't sit and pay attention for hours on end, and we're expecting them to. So I think that's the perfect conversation to have and translate into things like safe routes to schools, because we know kids that are more active and more engaged learn better. So why we're saying we're going to bus you to school. You just woke up. We're going to bus you to school. We're going to make you sit down all day long. You've got all this energy, and then we're going to let you go and say bye. So what do you learn? That sitting and taking in information, which is why, right now I'd tell you all to stand up, walk around, do a couple jumping jacks. So one of the things, when we get into the legislative session, we do a youth lobby day. Cynthia's helped me with it for the past few years, that we engage youth councils and high school students that are active in different programs. So if you're a debater, a journalism student, basically we invite everyone we can get our hands on to come down to the Capitol and talk to legislators. So I'm going to ask you guys, how many of you have had conversations with your legislators? Does anyone know who their legislators are? And does anyone know how to look it up? Because that is key when we're talking about making these improvements and making these changes. Number one, we need funding. Like, we can't just go out and put down a sidewalk. I don't have that particular skill nor change in my pocket. So we need funding for this. We've been working on it for 3 years. We managed to get $2 million for a limited period of time. We want that to be permanent, and we want it to be bigger. And so the more people we have engaged in this, the more we're going to be able to do. And the more you guys are talking to your legislators, the more they're hearing, we need safe routes. Safe routes money builds up to better infrastructure money, which is multimodal. And we're talking about more than just cars on roads. We're talking about bikes and kids and elderly and disabled. We're talking about all of it. And we want everybody to be able to be in their community and active with or without a car. So having your engagement on that end does us much better when we're standing here in February telling legislators to get up and walk out of a committee meeting. So as we've been down here for 3 years, had that little bit of success, I attribute it a lot to the students that we bring in, a lot to Cynthia being a dog on a bone with this. But I think number one, we need to be talking to the legislators, kind of meet people where they're at. Because we've hit some walls, some very big walls. When you have everybody's engaged and say, oh yeah, of course, safe routes. That's obviously, we want people to be safe in their communities and we want people out safely. But then they won't vote for it. And then they don't want to hear us talk anymore. And that's what we continuously are running into, in that it's not a priority because they have other priorities. So one of my main goals is to figure out what is their other priority. Because if your other priority is education, well, guess what? Active kids learn better. So this means we get people that are more engaged in school, we have a better workforce coming out of high school and people going on to college, if they're more interested in economic development. Well, guess what? Livable communities, you have more opportunities for businesses to thrive and more people engaged in their communities and entrepreneurship, and you see more shops when you're walking in front of them rather than when you're driving by them at 40 miles an hour. Simple things like that. So trying to figure out that connection between what's the priority of the legislator and what you can relate it to that goes back to your issue, huge.
So I wondered if you, Erin, you have a lot of experience in government and dealing with legislators and politicians. And so maybe for the audience, you know, we talk about contacting your legislator. Can you just get a little more specific on, or were you going to do that?
I am going to do that.
Sorry.
Thank you. So the Heart Association, we have our own organizational advocacy wing called You're the Cure. I don't like to overload people because I know how my inbox looks when I sign up for things. So I'm very careful. I tell people, sign up. Your issue is safe routes or your issue is walking and biking, physical activity. We have it set up so that you sign up, you get a little welcome message, what are you interested in? And you can click, this is what I'm interested in, this is all I want to hear about. So that nothing that's happening, you know, in EMS services is coming into your inbox, but you can be alerted when we have things happening here in the Capitol or at the federal level. So when we're trying to protect federal dollars or have the federal legislation that's going to expire in 2020, we want that secured so that we still have that coming to the state. So when that starts happening and we're talking to our congressman about that, that you guys get a little action alert and say, here's the information, really detailed it out. Here's a letter that you can edit all on your own. You can delete everything we have, take some information and put it down, and then you can select, we have it automatically selected who we want it to go to, but you can select specific people like, oh no, I can go, I know, Senator Hill, I can go talk to him, but I don't know, well, whoever's going to replace Ron Nate, but I'll send him an email. So we have that set up very easily at you'rethecure.org. I would love for you all to go sign up because that helps me when we are in this building and we need people to be on our side and activated. Because when I walk into a meeting with a legislator and Cynthia and I are in there, we're just two people. But I can go back and say, I know you have been contacted by 42 constituents about this issue. That's useful, and that's very helpful when we're talking. We have support, and they know it's not just a bunch of organizational people over here talking. It's the people who are voting for them. So that's huge for us. So if everyone can go sign up, I would really appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
I may have missed some of this, but I saw Blue Cross Blue Shield are they contributing to this effort?
Blue Cross Foundation.
Okay.
They work the High Five program and do the steps for schools, both the mayor's challenge and the legislative challenge.
Okay, and then my next follow-up question then, does it help when you're talking to these legislators to know that these big, huge economic drivers in the state are contributing to your program and getting kids out? I mean, how do these big organizations play into advocating and influencing?
So what we like to kind of think of it as is we're the big organizations that help support the communities doing the work. So we don't want to be the leaders. And I think, yeah, Courtney would think the same thing, that we're not the ones driving it because as the organizational structure, we don't have nearly as much credibility as actual constituents, which is why we love having this many people here at this conference engaged, because we know you guys are across the state in your communities doing the work. So we want to be able to provide you the resources and tools so that, and help kind of guide the work so that you can do what you need to do. So when talking to a legislator or your mayor or city council member, saying, we have community organizations along with support of organizations like Blue Cross Foundation, American Heart Association, AARP, those kinds of organizations. And we have, the help from the state as well.
So what I think I just heard you say is that those economic drivers in the state don't count as much as Joe Blow on the street to the legislators. And that I have a little trouble with, because legislators need money from those same organizations to run.
Well, so we're a nonprofit. We don't provide any money to candidates at all.
Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Blue Cross Foundation does not either.
Right, but it is a huge economic driver in this state.
So that's what we partner with, for our Safe Routes to Schools work, we've brought the Associated General Contractors in to help with us. So we try to look for very diverse partnerships where we can help work with them, those that can give that money to legislators, candidates, that sort of thing, because we have similar interests. Because, we talk to the Trucking Association, and they know their truckers don't want to hit, cyclists on roads, on these rural highways. So we want to talk to them and work with them so that they understand what we're trying to do, so that we can come to an agreement and say, yes, we're all in support of this.
You can see how you're bridging the infrastructure and the superstructure for the economy, and really safety, mobility, those are obvious benefits. So let me ask a quick question about the end game. You're building partnerships and you're working towards something. What is it? What's the end game? Do you have a preferred future that you're seeking to implement?
Technically, my end game is making the world more awesome. And there's several different ways that happens. I'm focused on health, obviously, Heart Association. We want to reduce death from heart attacks, strokes. Health Foundation, they would like to see less overweight, obese children that are unhealthy, that become unhealthy adults. We know that there's no one simple cause, so there's no one simple solution. So I work on numerous issues in the State House. Safe routes to school is one, but understanding the bigger picture of what drives different people. If we're trying to create a healthier Idaho, I know having people that walk and bike is huge to that piece. Therefore, Cynthia's ultimate goal of getting safer streets, highways, pathways for people to walk and bike is also my goal. So
you have a portfolio, and this is one of them. And so you're advancing your portfolio as a nonprofit should and does. And this is one piece of that links up with other people's goals, so you have a common goal, and that's how the partnership's built. I got it.
I almost look, and maybe this is just a random thought, but I almost look at community health as such a complex problem that it's like one of those colorful beach balls, and maybe this is one color of a, this Safe Routes partnership is one of the sections of that beach ball that actually is community health. And so if we can all work together in different arenas and different ways with different organizations, maybe we can have a grasp on kind of that whole of community health. And I know I look through the lens of children and children's health because that's just my tiny little piece of the beach ball. But I don't know.
I think of like our partnerships with AARP, like what does AARP have to do with safe routes to school? Like they talk about senior citizens, elderly, and we're talking about kids in school. Well, as Cynthia and I have said in more than one meeting, you don't roll up sidewalks at the end of the school year. Those are there for the community at all times, and that means we can have the elderly aging in place, staying in their homes longer so that they don't have to, move into assisted living, that sort of thing. When they have the ability, when they're not safe to drive anymore, but they're still active, they're still mobile, they still want to be engaged in their communities, they can do that. So it's finding those different partners that have the same kinds of goals that we can cross lines with. And we've been trying to do that, and I think that's where we ask you guys to come in as constituents and out in different communities, because you know the different pieces in your communities, and you know the people and the drivers and the different things that are making an impact there much better than we do as we sit in this building for 3 or 4 months of the year trying not to kill ourselves and jump out the 4th floor windows, because some days it's not as easy as others, but thank goodness. But one of those things, and I think they've said it in a couple of the other meetings we've been through yesterday and today, but inviting your legislator, your local councilman, your mayor to any event you are putting on. If you are doing a reception just to say hello to new members, invite a legislator. Particularly this time of year when things, maybe not in an election year, but when things might be calmer for them, they're not nearly as overwhelmed as during the session. Hearing from their constituents and having them engaged helps us when they get into session, because if we know you guys have been inviting them to different things and they've at least heard about it, even if they haven't shown up, they know you're doing stuff in their community. And they know that we can tap you guys and be like, hey, they're thinking about not voting for this. Why don't you tell them what you think? Because they're there working for you. So that's kind of one of the big pieces that we like to make sure you guys know. And it's the same thing when I am doing our youth lobby day, when I'm talking to high school students who sit here and say, why do they care what we think? It's, well, you're their next voter, and the changes that they're making are the ones that are going to impact you the most. So they want to hear your voice, and we want them to hear your voice, because that's much more powerful than the person sitting there getting paid to sit in front of them. I would rather have someone who's, not that I'm not passionate about it, but someone who is directly impacted on a regular basis is so much more impactful when you're talking to a legislator or a mayor. And so, like, we invited Congressman Simpson and Governor Otter to a walk to school day a few years ago, and I think we got a little bit of attention on that one, got a lot of play out of it, because they're a little bit high profile, but it's them surrounded by parents and teachers and dozens of students that are walking across the street, and then they see, oh wait, how do we get from this park to that? We're walking down the middle of the street because we can, but if I'm just two little kids, I can't do that, but there's no sidewalk and there's no place safe to walk. They start recognizing some things. Like Courtney was saying, when you get them out in their communities to actually pay attention to things, they recognize what needs to be changed. And if you can be the ones that say, here's how we change that, because you're knowing it. You know it more intimately than they do when they're not paying attention or driving past in their truck, and than we do when we're sitting in here trying to convince them to give you money. So, any questions? We want to open it up for discussion. I don't like talking at people.
Yesterday in one of the sessions, we had some folks pretty passionate about an area between Lake Hazel Middle School and Lake Hazel Elementary, LaGrange and Lake Hazel. How can we as community members build an event around that really challenging crossing with your step challenge? Is there a way we can get the state legislators that are out there? I don't know about February, but
I was about to say, yeah, get in
working with the PTAs or those principals out there and building somewhere they actually cross that crossing and see how challenging it is.
I don't even know who the legislators are in that area.
Harrison Daly.
Okay.
Bear. And Senator Bear.
Oh, yeah, Senator Bear. I tossed him aside because he's like old school for me. He's been around much longer. Number one, I would start like simple events like the October Walk to School Day are, I think those have so much ability to, number one, get people out to them because you're back to school, getting maybe kids that are young, that, you know, we're walking to school for this first time, and really engaging the school itself. So principal, teacher, parent, that can be a champion within the school, and connecting them with a legislator is huge. So, I mean, that kind of event is usually where I start, but there are people much more creative than I that come up with much better ideas. Like, do you have an idea?
I have a question, and a comment, I suppose. ACHD recently updated its bike walk map, and I know some folks from that area were involved. I was at some of those meetings, and they were talking about some connectivity issues that they wanted to see. So that's a really good place to reach out as well to ACHD and let. That's really important.
And I think we do run into challenges because who controls the road in what area, the highway district or the state or the city, becomes very complicated. And I learned that at looking at Glass Academy when we had someone from the Department of Transportation, someone from the county highway district, and someone from the city. And there was a pole that had been hit in an accident that wasn't working, and the sidewalk or the crossing buttons were no longer working. And we asked the question, like, so who's supposed to fix this? None of them knew. Nobody knew whose jurisdiction it was. And that's one of the things that I think we as constituents really need to make them responsible for. Know what you're responsible for. Because if you don't know if it's under you or the highway district, well, then it's never going to get solved. It's never going to get fixed until they have a critical mass of people saying, you have to fix this. They'll let it go because why are we making that a priority? Because we've got to fix this road and we've got to do that and we've got to do this. And, you know, it's that mixed bag of there's so many different things that we need to get done until it's the highest level priority because I just need these people to stop calling me daily. That's when it kind of hits. So hence, good that Cynthia's a dog on a bone about safe routes and all the other things that we're trying to do to get more walking and biking. But, you know, we want that critical mass to come from people out in the communities dealing with these issues on a daily basis, because that then bubbles up so that we can say we have voices, we have communities, and we know this is a priority. And I think it's the work that we did last year. We managed to get some dollars secured for grants for safe routes to school. Had we not been able to get anybody to really engage in that, I don't think we'd have the momentum that we have for safe routes right now. But because we had over 21 million in requests for, what was it, 5 million worth total for pedestrian safe routes, those kinds of projects. Yeah, so overall, like, we know the need is there. When you can show that discrepancy of this is what communities are requesting and this is all that's available, and that's communities across the state, rural and urban, and they're all needing something. They all see a problem that needs fixed and they're asking for help. That allows us to springboard that a little bit further so that we can say, we know this is not just, a couple people that have a key issue complaint to be a thorn in your side. This is a big deal across the state. More people want to be walking, more people want to be biking, and we want the ability for them to do that. That requires the funding that the state legislators need to give us.
So when it comes to that color of money thing, I work with that a lot because, we have matches from local, state, federal money. So one of the programs the state does with like the ADA program for curb, gutter, and sidewalk seems fairly benign. However, if you use that state color of money to match with a federal color of money, then you don't need a local match.
Exactly.
And so when I see money that's being spent without match, it takes me back to working at another agency where it's like we don't spend any state money without a match. I mean, we have to have our partnerships. So there are strategies that are effective.
Well, and the more partners, and I'll just kind of drop it. So we're taking on a new strategy this year because we have a chairman of a committee. I'm sure some of you have heard, like, chairmen of committees kind of have control. If they don't want to hear a piece of legislation, they won't. We're dealing with that issue with safe routes to schools, and that we have a chair that I got called a do-gooder as an insult for trying to work on safe routes to schools. So we're trying to go around him by changing where we're putting a statute for safe routes so that we can work with a different agency, but still keep the funding program the same in terms of what it looks like to communities, but changing the back door so that we don't have to hit a wall in a committee anymore. We can try a different way. So basically, it's that we found a new partner that gives us an opportunity to change the situation. So it's things like that we're really trying to make sure that we have those different partners that can reach out. I like to call them, the unique and unusuals, that, why are we engaged with Boise Economic Development Committee? Well, because they have certain priorities that we can fall into line with, and that's just another voice that comes in and talks to people about why this is important. So that's I think we're kind of close to time. I don't really have anything else, but my favorite school bus ever is Bear, the bus driver dog, in a school district in Pocatello that has a safe routes to school walking bus program. And Bear is apparently a hard driver and always on time because he likes to get to the playground to get his pets in before the kids have to go into class. So, but I love the picture on the left that kind of shows you've got 3 small children, a blind corner with no sidewalks. Those are the problems we're trying to solve. We know that's a problem. I think anyone who's walked on a street in their life can see that that's probably not great. So that's what we're trying to solve. We go to the heart of the issue. If you were in this morning's session with Chris and Don, that people are dying. That costs the state in more ways than just money. But the money thing's huge. But it costs so many different ways when you think about, police officers that have PTSD from having to try to save a 10-year-old's life and they don't. Thinking about what that would do to me, being the driver that hits someone. I don't want to be that person, and we're not going to stop people from driving cars, and we're not trying to stop people from driving cars. I certainly would much rather be where I'm not at risk of hitting a small child. So kind of finding those points, those partnerships to make a more livable, walkable community is huge. So that's why we've partnered. We've partnered with Walk Bike Alliance, we've partnered with the state, we've partnered with so many different people. So in your small communities, reach out. We would love to partner with you as well so that we can help prioritize your issues for legislators so that we can get you the resources and tools you need. Anything
Questions,
else?
comments, concerns?
Francois, Cynthia, Ivy? I get to torture
So-
them on a regular basis, so.
How do you get the message out to the larger group? I mean, I'm sitting here looking at who's in this room, and a lot of us are agency people. Or a number of us at least. And so how do you get it out to the larger public?
So what
I
we.
think the mayor's challenge is
Yep.
really creative and cool.
Yes,
by
okay,
the way.
so
That's cool.
that is, we were stuck in this position in the foundation of how to get our message out for a long time. And we spent some money trying to do ads or, how do you get your message across when you're a statewide organization? Because we don't have that much money, let me tell you. So through one of the other ways of the Mayor's School Walking Challenge is getting your advocates to talk about it as well. So when every single mayor who participates gets a media toolkit, it has videos. Travis that you saw here, he will go to every community that reaches out to him to do a small video and press release for them, and they will be contacting all of their local newspapers, things like that. So we provide the mayors every talking point, every graphic, everything that they can, because when Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation for Health person Courtney Frost, who lives in Boise, is trying to talk to someone in American Falls, they're like, okay, no thanks. So it makes it such a big difference when it's the mayor themselves or the community members themselves doing it. So the way we have tried to spread our message is definitely giving the participants tools that they can use on their own platforms. So that's how we've done it.
Has it been well received? I mean, you've got 34 mayors, is what you said?
54 have registered, and well, technically I think there's 210 registered cities in Idaho, but next year we're statewide. So next year the Mayor's School Walking Challenge is a statewide competition, so hopefully we will get some more participants that way. Yeah.
What I was saying, parents are champions even when they're not. I mean, who's not going to advocate for their own child? So getting into those kinds of organizations and getting in front of them, I have so many conversations with people at parent-teacher conferences and at Rotary and at American Legion, and basically get in front of anyone you can, the chamber and those kinds of groups, because you'll find that one person who's interested, and continuing the conversation with them, they become a champion and they can rally people really quick, because you've got that one person in the community that knows so many different people and can really engage. Finding that person and providing them the tools is huge. So that's what we're trying to do. So please reach out. More than happy to help, and would love your help when we get the legislation that we're going to get passed this year. After 3 years of banging our heads on walls, we want things to happen. So you guys being engaged and making sure that you have the information and tools and resources you need helps us. So thank you.
Primaries help?
What's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
And is your goal then to secure the 2 million? Is that the first step that you're trying?
We want the Safe Routes program itself written into legislation, and then the funding for it also to be an annual fund rather than one-off. So it's kind of a two-prong.
So it'd be separate from the TAP funds, right? Is that what you're kind of saying?
Right,
That
yes.
It would just be its own dedicated, okay.
This was the surplus eliminator, yes?
It's the surplus eliminator for the safety, the pedestrian and children's safety. We want to keep that as well, but we want that safe routes to schools as a solid program within statute.
Is it intended?
The surplus eliminator,
The 2 million you're looking at, and.
it's grants for the projects
100%
themselves.
State funded.
Infrastructure, non-infrastructure.
That one is for infrastructure alone. The TAP program still has the non-infrastructure dollars available as well.
So establishing a standalone.
Yeah, that's, as at this point in time, we're not going for the bigger goal. For the bigger goal, we want to get the program and the funding secured, because right now the state legislature isn't really on board with the non-infrastructure quite yet.
Got it.
So
Just want to know what the goal is.
yeah, we'll look at that in the next round as soon as we get this done. Anything else? Anyone have like any successes that you've seen? Anything that has been wonderful on your ends and communities?
Is there anyone from up north here?
Pullman, Washington.
Oh, okay. There we go. A Coug.
Well, I don't claim to be a Coug.
Okay.
I live there, yeah.
See, and I hate to rely on the accident statistics, the sob stories, because my friend was killed on the Moscow Pullman Highway riding her bike, but that helped spark get the Moscow Pullman Trail built, because it was that long ago when I was in college, but it's stories like that do make a difference. So making sure we know those things and have those advocates, and even when it's hard to talk about it, it's important to talk about it because these things are happening. So thank you all very much. We appreciate it.